There's this misconception that the CIA is only about thwarting terrorism. Truth is, we're just like any other office.
Grimerica.
If they're really in a weapons test program, what they will be exposed to is what people want to test now. So when you talk to victims of the intelligence agencies, you have to mentally prepare yourself that you will be hearing about technology that you might not even know about yet.
Okay, guys, welcome back to the Grimerica Show. We are going to be chatting with Dr. Katherine Horton a little bit later about spies and the CIA and the intelligence community and their secret weapons and all the
harassment
bullshit that they're up to, which fittingly lines pretty well with all the wiki-leaks stuff that's been coming out, so that'll be a fun one. But first, as always, Graham. I got nothing.
All right, good. That's good. Finally. Nothing. So yeah, this intro will be fun. We got some good feedback from our last episode.
So I'm going to need people to send me some shit because I got nothing.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, the stuff you wrote down in your little notepad there, you must have been pretty baked because it didn't even resonate with you.
I decided it was too mean.
That's good. You must be, I don't know, lightening up a bit or something.
Maybe. Better watch that.
So yeah, we had some good feedback from the last episode. This intro, like you can skip forward to the interview. There's a timestamp in the show notes, but we ramble on a little bit. We got some feedback from listeners on the last ET Let's Talk episode, some UFO sightings from listeners, and yeah, we'll jibber jabber about some other stuff.
Did you have any Sea City practice?
No, I'm missing it tonight, actually.
Are we allowed to talk about the stuff we said we wouldn't talk about on other episodes?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we can talk about how me and Costa hit it off because I hate Richard Gere.
Hate's a pretty strong word there, buddy.
That's right. I don't hate him. I just dislike him.
Yeah.
It turns out I was pretty spot on with some of your personality intuition.
Yeah, we don't have to get into that.
Indians have intuition.
Oh, yeah.
Indian tuition.
So, yeah, did you get some good feedback too? Or?
No, I've been getting all the emails now, though.
What do you mean?
All the ET Let's Talk emails.
Oh, yeah, good. Good, yeah.
Yeah.
See, I've been getting those. I wonder why you couldn't find me on the map.
Because you're not on there.
But I get all the emails, so I should sign up officially anyways, or make sure that I am. But yeah, we had a few listeners from around the world signing up.
Did we get some people to sign up?
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, that's good. Did you sign up yet?
No, that's what I was saying. I thought I was. I thought I was.
You should.
Yeah.
Once you sign up, I can sign out.
I'm pretty sure I did a long time ago. Maybe I got removed or something.
You got kicked out of the group again? That's like a thing for you, eh? Don't worry, buddy. We won't kick you out of Grimerica.
So you want to start with some feedback on that episode while we're talking about it?
Is it jingle worthy?
Sure.
Actually, you know what? Let's start with this is a friend of the show, Felix.
Okay.
Sent us in some...
Felix spends a lot of time in the chat room. If anybody's interested in meeting him, he'll be there.
Oh, yeah. Check out grimerica.ca/chat.
Unless he gets kicked out by Darren.
Don't compare me to the Verizon guy, or don't be comparing me to anyone in the chat. Probably a good way to get kicked out. You can just come back in, but it sends a message.
I popped in there the other day and people were asking us if Canuck is an insult.
Yeah, I said one of our hockey teams is named Canuck. We embrace it. Hoser's more, but it's still like whatever.
Maybe. Yeah.
Cheesehead. Isn't that like a Green Bay Packer thing?
Yeah, but I think it's Canadian as well.
Huh. I've never heard that. Oh, James. Oh, that's from yesterday. Why is James still going on about a synchro rating from like 2 years ago? Nobody cares, buddy. It's a 7. Back down to a 7. Okay. This fucking iPad is driving me crazy right now. Sorry, guys. Where is it?
This is what happens when we just...
This is just what happens when this happens. Where is it here? Here we go. It's a good vibes jingle, so it should give us some good vibes for the show. Yeah. It's a new one, brand new one. I just got it last night. Did you not listen to it?
No. I say it's just like how you don't read the synchros. I don't listen to the jingles.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's good.
Usually they're
unwritten rules. What we got here?
Usually they're against me.
If Maria supported the show, I'd be less sick of podcasts.
The blubbity blah.
Sending out good vibes.
Blubbity blah.
Good vibes.
108 breaths of deep gratitude and prayers for guidance and protection. And put on a didgeridoo and shamanic drumming track. Shivers or vibrations and stuff like that. 108 breaths of deep gratitude and prayers for guidance and protection. And put on a didgeridoo and shamanic drumming track. Shivers or vibrations and stuff like that. 108 breaths of deep gratitude and prayers for guidance and protection. And put on a didgeridoo and shamanic drumming track. Shivers or vibrations and stuff like that.
If Maria supported the show, I'd be less sick of podcasts.
This is a good play out outro one.
Yeah, I think it's great. Wow, it's awesome. I don't even remember that.
I like the blubbity blah.
I don't remember any of that.
You can make a whole song
back.
just out of the blubbity blah. Blubbity blah. I think he said there's another version that really extends the blubbity blah. I gotta hear the blubbity blah again.
Maria supported
Sending out good vibes.
Blubbity blah.
Good vibes.
Good stuff. Thank you, Felix.
Yeah, that's good. All right, I'll send some good vibes out to our listener from Vancouver. And this was pretty interesting. It hit home for me because he linked to a sighting on YouTube. And you see this craft flying over the city of Vancouver. Pretty clear, going in behind the buildings and stuff. So
we kept saying, what is that? What is that? And it wasn't until after the events happened and it disappeared to the south in the darkness that we went inside. We stayed outside for a couple seconds, and we went inside. And she sat on the couch, and I went to the bar, and I sit on the stool, and I took my glasses off, and we stared at each other for 5, 10, 15 minutes, who knows? And I got up, and I wanted to go back outside, and as I grabbed the door, I looked my wife right in the eye, and I said, we just saw our first UFO. And she looked at me back.
That's just another jingle, right? So that has nothing to do with this specific email I was about to read. That was a good one.
Booty pie.
I haven't seen that. I haven't heard that one in a long time.
It's on page 2.
Oh, you gotta make yourself a little more familiar with the jingle board there, buddy.
Stuff doesn't end up on page 2 by accident.
Okay, so he says, this is a link to a YouTube video of a vehicle that I thought I would never see again, and it was very hard to describe. I was at work in my bus. I drive for transit in Vancouver. Darren, remind me to tell you about the transit drivers in Vancouver later.
Absolutely.
While at the intersection sitting at a red light facing south on Great Canadian Way and Bridgeport Road, I saw this thing coming over the top of Bridgeport Road from my left or the east to my right west. It looked like it popped up from behind the Costco. It was low, just over the power lines, moving slowly, slower than the one in the video that I linked here. And it moved across the top of the fire hall and then over Sea Island Way and arced west toward YVR. That's the Vancouver airport. I watched it as it slowly moved across the road in front of us and then behind the newly constructed high-rises at Garden City Road and Sea Island Way. The light turned green and I had to go, but my passengers watched as it reappeared and continued to move toward downtown Vancouver. This was in the daylight hours, a fully loaded bus, and I pointed it out to some of the passengers in earshot. A ton of commercial planes landing and taking off from YVR as usual, but this thing flew low, below the flight line of the airline traffic. We were all gazing at this thing. At least 6 of us in the front of the bus took notice, each taking a guess as to what it was. Some people said it looked like a huge waterbed mattress. It was odd for sure, but I had to laugh at that one. It was windy outside, but how or who would inflate a waterbed mattress and send it aloft within 3,000 meters of a huge airport? LOL. It had a distortion about it. My assumption is that the distortions about it were the result of a strong rotating toroidal magnetic field. Wow. Taking into consideration, it was very close proximity to trees and high-rise buildings full of concrete and rebar and copper wire and aluminum To the viewer, the object would appear to be distorted and possibly seem like it was oscillating, waving, or wobbling, as if it was, heat distorted or a mirage. That's my guess only. Damn it, Jim. I'm a bus driver, not a starship engineer. It was lifting all kinds of trash up toward the bottom center of itself. The swirling debris included plastic bags and leaves, paper bags, and other junk. This lofting material, before actually making contact with the vehicle, would billow out at its sides and fall down away from the craft and then get sucked up again back toward the vehicle over and over again. To note, this lofting debris rotated counterclockwise at the same speed as the vehicle itself rotated. Interestingly, because it was freakishly windy that day. This thing flew into the wind, taking all the trash with it. I can't tell you what this was. It was a few months ago. There may be a tag in the video that someone can find. I put the whole sighting out of my mind as this was just another thing I've seen. There have been a lot of odd things recently, but I wanted to write you guys anyways and tell you about it after I saw the video. But I'm grateful for the person that posted this video. It has made me happy to be able to see it again and share my experience. On a synchronistic note, Darren, I had forgotten all about this odd sighting until I opened up YouTube one day for shits and giggles and found the heading recommended for you. So I checked it out, and there was the flying vehicle I saw. 5.5 or better? Much love, brothers. That's from Brian.
Out of 6.
That's better.
6.5?
Yeah. So then I watched the YouTube video, and it shows this craft flying around the outside of like the city of Vancouver, like right downtown around the buildings. It's pretty crazy.
Really?
Yeah.
I'd like to see that.
Yeah. I'll show you one day. And then, bus drivers in Vancouver, way different than the ones in Calgary.
Really?
Yeah. If you don't stop, they will hit you. They pull out, they put on their ticker and they pull out. They do not wait for you. In Calgary, they're way more polite. It's very strange. They wait for you to go by, and then in Calgary, they pull out. Completely different in Vancouver.
Really?
Yeah. Totally.
No, you're
aggro.
supposed to stop.
I know you're supposed to, but I think, but they just, it's like 180 degrees.
Well, that's like the C-Train drivers here. Buddy said, he's like, if someone walks out in front of me, man, look out. Because he's like, he said he hit someone before, he got 6 months off paid.
Really?
Yeah, as long as you need to recover.
Wow.
He also let me drive the C-Train.
While you were partying.
Well, I was partying.
Yeah,
so he was probably not, the most honest C-Train driver.
We should hear that. Maybe you should tell us that classic story.
That's not, no, I'm saving that for my memoirs.
So yeah, thanks, Bri. I thought I had something else to say about that, but I hope you're driving safe out there, not cutting too many people off.
Especially buses.
So I also got some feedback from one of our bloggers. So we should talk about our bloggers.
We need a blogger jingle.
Yeah, we need a blogger jingle. Matt in the Hat / Altrusian Grace has started up a YouTube video with meditations, and they sound pretty cool, actually. You want to pop over that chord, and I'll let you hear it?
Really?
Yeah, we should be.
Remember your Mac, because I don't know what it is with Mac and audio and fucking audio ports, but they suck at it.
They do, yeah. Yeah.
Fix that shit. What's his name? Tim Cook? When I'm Prime Minister, things are going to change.
Altrusian Grace Media Channel.
He's a real sultry voice.
On a unique.
You could go on the list of people to replace you if anything ever happens.
If I get hit by a bus?
Not that there's a list. Or at least not a very long one.
Be insured by the user. Before we begin, it is recommended that you wear headphones as you listen and are free from external distractions and activities.
So there's a sample. It's awesome. So we're going to try this. He's got a few on the site now. Deep ambient version for synchronicity and subconscious empowerment. Guided meditation for, I just said that one. What's the other one here? For total body consciousness, relaxation, and astral projection.
That's right. And Naps, of course, he's been publishing weekly Lost Breads again.
Yeah, that's Napoleon. He's like one of the best digital graphic artists.
He does all the show. show art.
Yeah.
By the way, if you guys are using the native podcast player, you're missing out on all the episode art.
You mean the iTunes native podcast player?
Yeah, it doesn't show it. I know people say they don't care, but if you switched to like an Overcast, which is free, you would suddenly care. It's nice.
Yeah.
It's sharp. Not a lot of shows do it. There's a couple, but...
Big thanks to Nap for doing that every week.
And then Justin's got some new blogs up there as well. I know, I'm trying to remember. Someone had put up some...
Smells like a teen spirit.
You know, actually, Cyrus texted me today because he was in Aberdeen, Washington.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, listening to Nirvana.
Oh, yeah. Is that where Cobain was?
Yeah, that's where he was born. But I don't think the blog doesn't have anything to do with Cobain. No, I was looking for... Oh, there's the April Fool's one. I got James.
Yeah.
He actually deleted it off the Facebook because he thought it was inappropriate. I'm going back. Oh, there it is, the psychedelic coloring page. Oh, that's Matt in the Hat too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So check those out.
So, do you want me to read his email about the ET Let's Talk episode?
Sure.
So he says, Graham, I'm not skeptical about the experience or of people having the experience. However, what troubles me a bit is, in reference to the interview, is this idea that there's a tipping point for the number of people inviting the phenomena. The statement hit me in the gut. Immediately, I thought of vampires and how they need to be invited into your home. They can't just decide to enter. They need your permission. For whatever reason, I don't buy the notion that ET needs mass approval. They want to study energy systems in humans? For what? To feed off them more efficiently? Who knows, but I know there's a lot of speculation about ET being demonic in nature, or that this is a part of Project Bluebeam in advance of the upcoming false flag alien war. And to be fair, there's also a lot of positive speculation. But something strikes me about this specifically in a bad way. I'm myself guilty of attempting to thin the veil, even recently. Thanks, Jeff Ritzman and Craig Bishop, and being somewhat successful. I even signed up for the ET Talk website after listening to this episode out of curiosity. But I want anyone doing this to be extremely careful and vigilant while doing this work. We are dealing with something that is truly still beyond our comprehension or understanding. Don't forget that crop circle message. Beware the bearers of false gifts and broken promises. So I
think I owe some people some blogs.
Yeah, if Darren owes you a blog, don't feel shy, and please follow up with that.
Yeah, just keep emailing me until I do it. And you know what else I wanted to mention is that there's a bunch of blogs up there that haven't posted in a year or two, and I was thinking about moving them into an archive, just because as I add more blogs, the drop-down menu is getting kind of long, and I'm going to add 3 to that. So it's just getting kind of long. So there's blogs that haven't... me and you are both out of here. We're going to go to the archives.
Okay.
And then I'm not going to name any of them, but, if you're still listening to the show and you've got a blog and you just, there's not pressure on anyone to blog. Just if you're not planning on doing it, just let me know so I can move them into a different menu or something.
Okay.
For sure.
So anyways, I responded to him because I didn't think that the tipping point was about making contact. I thought it was the sort of cliche tipping point of people waking up, reaching a different state of consciousness and waking up. So I emailed him that back, and he says, I'll have to go back and listen again. When it comes to the UFO thing, I'm by no means take a hard stance on categorizing them. They are definitely black budget technology projects, experimental aircraft, etc. But when it gets tied to personal or group summonings with the consciousness/intent factor, anything is fair game. This includes natural phenomena, demonic forces, space brothers, tapping the boundaries of a computer-generated universe, and on and on. We can only be certain of one thing, that nothing is for certain. So while I can absolutely appreciate what these folks are doing, as in a way, I'm doing it myself without any strict protocols, I am skeptical of any hard statements about soft subjects, especially when it comes to something akin to some type of extraterrestrial agenda. And I don't really think we need any kind of disclosure. But like I said, I have to listen again. Maybe I was only hearing it in a way that I wanted to hear it, or unintentionally took it out of context. Whatever it was said about a certain percentage of people and a tipping point made me slightly alarmed or concerned, and I had to put the brakes on and question it, at least for myself. Cheers, Matt. Yeah.
Matt in the hat.
Yeah, well said. Yeah. But I still think, I think it was about elevated consciousness, that kind of thing, not about specific intent or a certain percentage of people trying to make contact. So if anybody else, I'd like to hear what other people say, if they have similar thoughts to Matt or myself on that.
Word up.
All right, buddy, what do you want to get into now?
Social media.
Oh, sure, you got something?
I got a couple.
Bingo, bango, social media jingle. Don't forget to rate, comment, and or subscribe to the Grimerica newsletter.
So what do we got? We got one on the original Grimerica Talks to Randall Carlson.
Oh, yeah?
Wow, great interview. Thank you. This just in on April 21st, 2017. Ancient stone carvings confirm that a comet struck Earth around 11,000 BC, a devastating event which wiped out woolly mammoths and sparked the rise of civilization. Experts at the University of Edinburgh analyzed mysterious symbols carved into stone pillars at Göbekli Tepe in southern Turkey to find out if they could be linked to constellations. The marking suggests that a swarm of comet fragments hit Earth at the exact same time a mini ice age struck, changing the entire course of human history.
That wasn't really human-caused global warming, was it, back then?
Doing this again?
What?
We're going to get into global warming with Randall on
Right
our
on.
next week's show.
Yeah, that'll be good.
And it's going to be video, too. First video, real
Hopefully.
slideshow
Hopefully,
video.
we'll see.
Well, we'll see how it goes. Yeah, we should watch because these things tend to fall apart. But I'm not going to leave Graham in charge of editing anything this time, so...
Yeah. So we'll get it
what
within a
else we
couple
got?
months.
3 minutes is all I could take of this juvenile, mundane, superficial banter. UFO abduction field is making progress in the 70s, 80s with Mac, Hopkins, and Valet before everybody decide to hang up a UFO expert shingle and cause confusion.
What? So what was that from?
That was from episode 165.
Which was?
Greg Bishop.
Wow.
Then we got,
So what was his point about the abductions?
I don't know, I said we were hoping to get rid of you sooner, but I suppose 3 minutes isn't bad. We got the Earth is flat, and Joni replied, operator base, that haunted house that moron lived in. It's flat. What? Yes, I took video. And then he also said, smart blokes. Some smart blokes are dolphins. We got, I don't know, it doesn't seem to me that it's very nice to contact ETs to visit the planet you live on when there are other good folks who also live here who might not think that's a very good idea. Just saying. Bingo bango. Bingo bango. Are there any females in Calgary, or do you procreate through bottom sex?
Wow. What does that mean? Oh, okay.
That's it.
Wow.
It's not bad. Mixed basket.
Yeah, thanks. A little more hate than usual.
Yeah. A little more than usual. That's okay. It's funny.
So I got a little bio-tinkering segment, or you could do like a UFO quote of the week as well.
Darren and Graham are going deep. It's a profound UFO quote of the week.
All right. This is...
Words to ponder and
Come on.
critique.
Okay.
It's a profound UFO quote of the week.
You like that one too, don't you?
I do like that one. Yeah.
Okay. So this is from CIA.gov. Actually, it's kind of appropriate that in this episode later on with Dr. Katherine Horton, we're going to be talking about the one agency, basically the global agency of all agencies connected. But this is from the Central Intelligence Agency, and it's from their e-docs, their library, their e-reading room, and it's from 1952, the French Morocco, French West African. It's about some military sightings. The subject is military unidentified aircraft. So this is there's a couple different ones in here. Eyewitnesses report saucer over Dakar. That's in July 12th, 52. Reports the statement of an eyewitness who claims to observe the flying saucer over Dakar on July 3rd, 1952. There's a ton of them around the same time frame. According to this account, the object was flat and tapered in shape and issued forth bluish and reddish flames, which they were quite long and very clearly visible. The other report also says it was moving southward at a great rate of speed and an altitude of 1,500 meters. This one is seen in Morocco, Casablanca, July 16th, 1952. It is reported from Mekra, Belkaciri, that on July 12th, 2 flying saucers were seen by 2 policemen on night at Had Court. The saucers were elongated in shape, followed by a trail of white light. Traveled from a high rate of speed again. On July 13th, 2 inhabitants of Federala reported having seen a blue-green ball-shaped object actually, followed by a short trail of light and moving at a rather high rate of speed. July 14th, a man and his wife reported having observed for about 30 seconds at about 9 o'clock a mysterious flying object traveling from Ephraim in the direction of
From Ephraim?
Yeah, Ephraim. So it goes on and on here. There's another one. The object flat and I already read that one. 2 flying saucers. Oh, so that's about it. Yeah. There is a bunch more in here too, but I'll end it there. So it's pretty cool how the CIA has this, and from 1952, there's a rash of sightings from Dakar and Morocco.
Morocco?
Yeah. Luminous flying objects, white fires in the sky.
Okay.
Yellow flying discs.
Wrap it up.
Blue phosphorescent, ovoid object. Lots of stuff going on in those few days. Jeez, I haven't heard much about that in the UFO lore.
Huh. I want to hear more about this. Felix pumps out jingles like a factory. And they're good, you know. It's the other one's on the voicemail. It's too hard to use.
So this is it's just a natural process, not natural process, but prolotherapy. I was doing it for my knee injury. You ever heard of it?
Your knee injury?
Yeah.
How did you get your knee injury?
It's been like ongoing since last summer, and it's kind of evolved all over my leg, and it's just sort of weak. So it wasn't really that bad. But I've also been doing
evolved isn't the word.
I've been doing it on my shoulder as well. That's been really chronic for like 15 years. Had a problem with my shoulder.
I have real bad shoulder problems here.
Well, you should maybe try. So prolotherapy, aka regenerative injection therapy, is also known as ligament reconstruction therapy or sclerotherapy. It's a recognized orthopedic procedure that stimulates the body's natural healing process to strengthen joints weakened by trauma or arthritis. So joints weaken when ligaments and tendons are stretched, torn, or fragmented, become hypermobile and painful. Traditional approaches with anti-inflammatory drugs and surgery often fail to stabilize the joint and relieve pain permanently. Prolotherapy has a unique ability to directly address the cause and instability and repair the weakened sites, resulting in permanent stabilization of the joint. When precisely injected into the site of pain or injury, prolotherapy creates a mild controlled inflammation which stimulates the body to lay down new tendon or ligament fibers, resulting in the strengthening of the weakened structure. When the joint becomes strong, pain will be relieved. So this is good for a spectrum of conditions, including arthritis, backaches, carpal tunnel, compression fractures, knee condition, herniated discs, chronic headaches, tennis elbow, shoulder pain, varicose veins, temporal mandibular joint dysfunction, work-related injuries, sports-related injuries, and much more. And our insurance covers this. So it's covered under naturopathy, which is awesome. So I get
What else
$500
is covered under naturopathy?
I get $500 a year I could use towards Prolo. So I use mine up, and I'm telling you, my knee's like 100%.
You should give me that exact info so I can.
It's in the show notes.
The actual place and everything.
Yeah. He's downtown. He's a great.
Does he direct bill? Well, it doesn't even matter. Those benefits pay back real quick.
They do. Yeah, they're good.
Yeah.
So, anyways, see the option is, and the problem is doctors don't even recommend this, which is weird. Because it's too natural and it actually heals you. They'll probably say there's a lack of scientific evidence. I don't know how controversial this is. It's been going on for a while. There's only a couple people in Calgary that do it.
Yeah, I'm gonna check that out.
My girlfriend gets it all the time. There's none in Saskatchewan anymore. I don't think. So, anyways, the doctors recommend cortisone, right? Which rips apart your muscle from your bone eventually. Like, it's got short-term relief, but it totally damages it. So the option is like steroids or cortisone, or you can go to this, holistic naturopathic therapy. So yeah, I just wanted to say it's been helpful for me.
Cool beans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Put a link in the show notes.
Right on. Hey, check out grimerica.ca/support, guys. Sign up for a monthly there if you can. Help us keep the lights on around here, keep the bills paid. We've taken our vow of never doing ads or paywalls or anything. And we're going to stand by.
Never. I mean, we don't
never say never.
But I mean, that might not even be an option soon enough with the way things are going.
That's exactly right. So if you can, check out grimerica.ca/support if you feel that the show brings you some value. Send some value back our way for as little as $1 a month, all the way up to $30 a month. Really, if you want any denomination, I can send it to you custom. But yeah, if you could sign up even for $1 a month, that'd be great. You can do one-time donations there as well. Those are awesome too. If you can't support the show financially, we completely understand that as well. And there's a bunch of other ways you can support the show for free. Check out grimerica.ca/swag if you want to buy any gear. And spam Graham, that's free. Viewing the show is free. Telling people about this motherfucker is free. Share it wherever you can. What else? Is that it? Sign up for the newsletter. Sign other people up for the newsletter. grimerica.ca/news. That comes with the special cabin episode that we recorded a couple weeks back.
Contact at the cabin. Yeah, we didn't want to release that because we had a bunch of new listeners and we thought people are going to think we're fucking nuts, but...
Yeah, there's still the Shroom episode too.
I got an email to read about that. I got some... Lots of trip reports are accumulating. Send in your trip reports, synchronicities, sightings, all that kind of stuff. We like to read it on the show. So we could do a whole trip report episode soon.
Beauty. And I'm gonna play some music that was sent in by John Fletcher for the break.
Right on. Big shout out to Fletcher.
Yeah, and then we'll jump into the interview with Dr. Horton.
Tonight we've got with us Dr. Katherine Horton. She's a particle physicist and founder of the site that I'm on right now, which is stop007.org. And she became targeted by intelligence agencies back in 2011. I think it's been going on ever since she attended a high court case in London. So it's quite interesting. The website is full of all kinds of information. We could get a little deep here. It's pretty hard to believe some of the stuff, but we thought we'd give Katherine a voice here on the podcast. So welcome to the show, Katherine.
Hello, and nice to meet you too.
Thanks for coming on.
Well, it is a pleasure. It is a pleasure. And as you said, I mean, a lot of the things that I talk about are at first hard to believe. But I'll really do my best to actually show your audience that it's actually not that hard to believe, but it's in fact what you would expect, given our current affairs.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, especially with our political climate right now and all the wiki-leaks and all this stuff that is just out front for everybody to see. You know, it is easier to connect this just to reality, to something that might happen.
Absolutely. And actually, a lot of the things that I talk about have been revealed by the WikiLeaks Vault 7. So just recently, the Vault 7 release contained, it was a document where several hundred victims were begging for help. And they were saying, please stop these criminals because they're murdering us. So, and that's describing exactly what I'm talking about. So it's attacks with microwave weapons and intelligence agencies going, absolutely insane. And that email was sent to Stratfor. So it's actually on my website. When people go to the FAQ section, the WikiLeaks Vault 7 release is there. So everything I say, I can also back up with documents and reference other researchers.
Wow.
So
wow.
I will stay entirely within the remit of what I can actually prove. So your audience should, sit down, take a cup of tea, lean back, and just, just listen to this. Because actually, another thing I want to say before we launch into it is that a lot of the things I will be talking about will be very hard going and very shocking at first. But I want everybody to just push through this, fear and shock barrier. And remember that, if they're just listening to it, there are many people actually living it. And the truth is that my colleagues and I, who are now working on trying to stop this criminality, we have discovered that it has accelerated. And it's actually feeding into a much bigger criminal plan here. And the blank truth is that we need absolutely everybody on the planet who can help us stop this. I'm not kidding. So I can explain everything, how it came about and how I ended up doing what I'm doing. But what I actually want to say to your audience is that if whoever's hearing this is a requisitioning call. We need troops. We need troops to help us because what this is modern warfare. We are actually already in the middle of World War III. We just I hope that people can take in what I'm saying, and they should. I urge them, if they finish listening to this, to just look into the things that I have said, convince themselves that they're true, and then help us stop this, because wherever they are, we need them.
Okay, before we get back into the history of it, when did it start accelerating, do you think? Is the acceleration correlated to the sort of WikiLeaks type opening up of everything? Like, it almost feels like things are unraveling and they're scrambling to maintain control.
In a sense, they are. In a sense, they are quite panicked, but that's why it is so dangerous right now, because that's when the hot war kicks off. It has accelerated, as far as I can tell, based on what I have seen. It has accelerated in a step function with the start of the war on terror, which I actually call the war of terror. It was then when the intelligence agency budgets exploded in an unprecedented manner. And to give you an idea, MI5 in the UK, their budget doubled after 2003. Now, this is unprecedented. What it means in real terms is that today we've got MI5 as it was before, and we've got a second black MI5, the same size.
Wow.
So, and, there's a Guardian article. So if people Google, I think it's Guardian or The Independent. So MI5 and then budget doubling, and the headcount tripled. So in terms of personnel, we actually have one MI5 and two black MI5s. But then their operations quintupled, so it went up by a factor of 5. So in terms of what nonsense these people are doing, we've got the old MI5 and 4 more MI5s. So that's to give you a scale of the problem, you know.
Now, because most of our listeners are here in North America, I mean, we have them all over the world, but can you just for people...
the UK posse?
Yeah, we've got the UK posse out there. MI5 is similar to the American, is it the FBI? And then the MI6 is like CIA, or?
Exactly. So as I understand it, the FBI is, I never know if it's an intelligence agency or police force, but it's probably a bit of both.
Exactly.
Yeah, so MI5 is exactly that. It's the domestic intelligence, and MI6 is foreign intelligence.
Okay.
In Canada, we have the Royal Canadian Mounted Police.
Yeah, and actually everything I say also applies to Canada. I mean, you are part of the Five Eyes, but this is much bigger than the Five Eyes. This is a global system. And there are some parts of the world where it's a bit tamer, but what we're actually dealing with is that the intelligence agencies, unbeknown to most people, have fused with time. And actually, they fused a long, long time ago. And that is because they started off, as the surveillance network of the royal households and so on. And then royal households would, want to keep an eye on their people, and would be sometimes family relations, so the families of France and the UK used to be, actually related. And so their surveillance networks morphed a long time ago. And the truth is, as far as I can tell, to the best of my knowledge, what we have today is a global intelligence conglomerate that is tightly fused amongst themselves and not very closely regulated by the national governments at all.
Right.
It's like we've got a runaway, a monster, a Frankenstein monster of its own volition. And I don't know a single government on the planet that has managed to keep the intelligence agency in check. So, and that is where all the problems stem from.
So it sounds to me like, and I don't want to get too political here at all, but it sounds to me like it's the, this whole globalist movement that's going on. There's a big fight in the election in France and what happened with Trump and the Brexit and all this, globalist versus nationalist. Is this the intelligence arm of that same movement? Like, are they tied together, or is it a separate, deeper thing?
It is exactly right. It is entirely connected. So to cut to the chase, and maybe it helps to start with the global picture before we go into detail. So what we have on our planet today is, in actual fact, is not what we all assumed we have. So, for example, if we start with the banks, the central banks, it turns out that, first of all, private, and second of all, they are all one organization that is headquartered in Switzerland, which is the Bank of International Settlement, the BIS. And that is considered the central bank of central banks. What it actually is, it's in finance, it's referred to as the one bank. So in finance, it's already well known that the big private global banks and the central banks are also the one and the same entity. Okay, so in finance, everybody already talks about the one bank. So that is the global one bank. Now, what I want to put to your listeners is that in the intelligence community, we have exactly the same. I call it the one agency. So forget about Five Eyes. We're so past Five Eyes. It is a global, a global eye by now. And it stands to reason that the one agency is owned by the one bank. And why is that? It's because anybody who can buy an intelligence agency becomes incredibly powerful because they can do whatever they like. They can snoop on governments and so on. So the people who are printing our money, sooner or later, they will want to buy the intelligence agencies. And I think they did a long, long time ago. And if you like, what the Third World War is, in actual, they will tell us everything else. They will tell us, it's us against the Islamists, it's us against the Russians or the Chinese. Nonsense. World War III is actually us against the one bank. That's it. If you know that, everything else in current affairs will make sense, and everything I'll say will make sense. But because the one bank has bought the one agency, so if you like, your CIA is just the local branch, and MI6 are just the local branch of the one agency. And there are already people who looked into it in greater detail, and they say, the one agency is also headquartered in Switzerland.
So is this like a since they killed Kennedy thing? Because I mean, I've been entertaining the idea that that's kind of like when the CIA sort of took control of the American government, and they've kind of been running the show ever since until recently, maybe or maybe not. This is a
coup.
Well, yeah, that's what that Prosniak was saying. He was talking about interagency wars, and it's really seemed like all the CIA-run media didn't want Trump to be in the White House, and it really seemed like, it's like 80% of Americans now think that the CIA killed Kennedy. It was just a couple weeks after he said he was going to shatter it into a million pieces.
Yeah,
and
I understand what you're saying, that that was the point when the CIA took over. But I think in actual fact, by that time they had already taken over, which is why they could just bump off whoever they wanted to. And if we, I could only figure it out by using systems analysis. So that's just the modeling of the structures we have in our society. And it maybe helps to go back in history to how the US was conquered. If we go back, it was the royal households paying for the voyages and paying for the exploration, and of course they wanted to have a cut of the land. So by the time you had all the colonialist movements and so on, and of course they arrived with their surveillance networks. You would never you would want to know what's going on there, right? Because there was so much money to be made. So I would say the US was already controlled by the European intelligence agencies back in the 15th century. CIA has grown out of these local seedlings, I would say.
It sure seems like the U.S. has been a big experiment.
Well, I mean, you've heard about private spy networks since Rockefeller, right, with his oil things. Like when the I can't remember if it was the Rothschilds, but someone was trying to get into oil in Europe, and I remember they were being real secret about it because Rockefeller had spies all over, and he'd just come in and buy you out, or railroad you because you already had $1 billion fucking bucks.
Yes, I think this. But even so, even that I would say is just local shades of pretty much the same organization. Because, for example, the Rockefellers were in the banking sector, and the banking sector going back in history was what financed all the voyages, for royalty. So whichever way we turn it, we realize that finance has been, on the spying game for a lot longer than we would expect. Because, if you've got assets somewhere, you would want to keep an eye on them. If you've got foreign assets, you want to keep an eye on them. So I would almost say that, first of all, I discovered that a lot of the things that the intelligence agencies feed us is one big show. They're con artists, they're professional saboteurs. And I so many times I just ran up against the wall because I took stuff on face value. And I think you have peeled back several layers, but what I would say is you have to go even further. Keep peeling back the layers. And so, ultimately, what I would say is that so what's relevant for today, for the situation we are now, is whatever anybody says, the best way to understand current affairs is to just assume there's one global bank that owns everything. They also own the spy agencies. And what they're doing is that they're asset stripping everybody who's not part of that cartel. And that can be governments. That could be also private people. It could be other companies that are not part of the cartel. It's like a cancer that keeps growing and wants to just get more and more resources. And now the name of the game is to identify who is part of the cartel and who isn't. And how are we going to stop the spread of this? because it is a runaway process.
Wow. So do you think is there a counter coup going on in the intelligence agencies then? And then is there nations themselves that are trying to stand up against this, or is it all way past that?
No, I think you're absolutely right. That's exactly what's happening. And there are counter coups going on, and actually the counter coups, interestingly, are going on at all scales. They're going on, as far as I can tell, they're going on the nation state level. They're also going on at the city level or state level maybe, but also at the local community level. And this is why it's so dangerous, because it's actually a war at all scales. It's everybody against everybody. Sometimes you would have one intelligence agency within one country, having infighting between two factions. And one faction in one country might be closer to that side of the battle in another country. So it's when you look into this, it becomes very confusing. And after a while, you don't know who to trust and whose side you're on. And this is what makes it so dangerous. We haven't even talked about the modern weapons, but in any sort of situation in war where you don't know who your enemy is, people get paranoid, right? And they have a short fuse. And that's what we also see now. So it's very, very dangerous time we're in now, which is why I think we need a lot of transparency. People need to be on the same page. And everybody has to think for themselves, what is the best thing, first of all, for themselves, but not just themselves, but for the entire community, because we have to stabilize the situation. And I'll explain in more detail what's happening. But for example, you asked, is there a counter coup going on? And I would say yes. For example, the wiki-leaks, those releases that we just can just read on the internet, they take higher level hacking, nation state level hacking to bring to us. So what you see in these Vault 7 releases and so on are the good parts of the intelligence agencies who are desperately fighting to get transparency and get all this out. And it's our responsibility to take that information, to realize that this has been brought to us by people who risk their lives. And we have to go through it with the fine comb and go after the criminals who are revealed in those leaks. And it is our task. That's where we come into the battle. We have to crowdfund court cases, and we have to lock the criminals up, and we have to remove them from our system, because what we're dealing with it's called deep capture. It's deep capture by organized crime, And the reason why it's come about is because the one bank doesn't just own the intelligence agencies, it also owns organized crime, because it's the most profitable business you can have, because you don't pay tax.
Yeah.
So that's it. That's the big picture, So we're fighting the one bank, we're fighting the one agency, and we're fighting organized crime. And it turns out they're all one and the same entity. Go figure.
Yeah, that's a good big picture view. I like that. Darren, we got to talk more about WikiLeaks on this show. I think we got to sort of. I feel like we have a voice here. We could. How many of those Vault
7s have come out now?
Oh gosh, I think it's gigabytes and gigabytes. I lost track because the last couple of weeks I was literally fighting for my life. But there's a lot of information there. And you know what? People always complain about how the media is totally bought, the mainstream media. And what I would say to people is just become your own media platform, Just be a single investigative journalist. And I think what we have to learn as humanity is, instead of just paying a big corporation and big outfit, by having a monthly subscription to a newspaper, what we should do is have monthly subscriptions to individuals whom we trust, whose work we really like.
And the Grimerica show.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, what I'm saying and what I hope I will get around to saying is a bombshell. It's not going to be talked about in mainstream media at all. And yet it is the single biggest issue for US, Canada, and any other European nation's national security.
Well, what's funny is it's already like there's a total, a few years ago, WikiLeaks was the big thing, and now it's like they go against the CIA, and it's like instant nothing, like crickets, nothing.
Yeah. Exactly.
And more people are following independent media. I mean, the media, the news media that I pay attention to
between Alex Jones and Joe Rogan, they're like 50 times anything mainstream's doing.
Yeah. And at least there's a lot of listener-funded media as well, which is sort of what we end up gravitating to is media that's funded by the listeners of the show themselves. So there's no worry about propaganda through advertising or censorship or anything like that.
Exactly, and it's all those listeners who are already investing in you. They are what they're doing is they are building the future for their children. That's what they're actually doing. And one of the things I'm always trying to get across to people is that don't get upset that you only asked to vote every 4 or 5 years, because you don't realize, but you are voting every day with your money. Every time you go and buy something, it's like a vote. So your money is worth much more than the vote once every 4 years. So think carefully what you vote for with your money. Are you going to put it into mainstream media? Or are you going to get an even bigger flat screen TV? Or are you going to take the difference between the medium size and the really big flat screen TV and invest that into media platforms? Or maybe individuals who are fighting court cases that are pivotal, And I think what we will see the coming couple of years is a total rethinking and a total re-education of ourselves, away from our previous existence, which was pretty much living in autopilot. We go to work and then, we get married, raise children and so on. And someone else should take care of our pension fund. Someone else should take care of, running our politics and the local water company. And that has gotten us into the biggest misery ever because we were taken over by criminals. So now we have to do work to recapture our organizations from the criminals. And once and for all, we all have to put back personal responsibility and personal liability and personal attention to all these matters.
That's a great point. I mean, it might even just be buying local instead of, all this corporate prefabricated store-bought stuff, just buy local at the farmer's market more or something like that.
Exactly, yes. And also, put your money into the people who you know and trust and the people who you want to support. Yeah.
And then you made a good point about the court cases. Like maybe that's going to be the newest trend in crowdfunding. Is like people that are, they have a couple extra bucks, they can put it towards court cases against some of these things that you would never traditionally see even in court.
Absolutely, and that is pivotal. I think the UK has something called crowd justice. Maybe you have it in the Americas too, but I know about crowd justice. That's one platform. But other people are just raising money through GoFundMe and so on. But I have to say, if we want to change our world, we actually can in just a few years. We also have to, and I'll get into why, but the best way to do that is counterintuitive because people think, the court cases or, the courts are all captured and corrupt and so on. Yes, they are partially corrupt, but not all of them. But the truth is the courts are the only institution we have where we can stop large companies or an arm of a government from doing horrific stuff. It's only through the courts. And, the big corporations have figured it out, which is why they, you have to look at where they invest lots and lots of money. They invested, of course, into marketing, fair enough, but then also into lobbying and then court cases. If you go to the commercial courts, the amount of money these people throw at their lawyers is astronomical because they figured out, even for big corporations, the courts are the pivot point.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. So do you want to get into the bombshell or should we get back to
anything like that correlates all that?
All right, everybody. So hold tightly. I can explain who I am and how I got here. So I am originally a high-energy physicist. I'm a particle physicist. I worked for years at the University of Oxford in the UK, and I worked at CERN I also worked at another accelerator lab for years called DAISY. That's the German electron synchrotron. And that's what I did for years and years. And then when the financial crisis hit, I just thought, well, I want to do something that's more relevant to everyday work, because there are all these conspiracy theories out about CERN, the high energy experiments, but I can dispel them in 2 sentences. And that's just simply saying that, the collisions that we're producing and the energies that we are doing, that is nothing compared to the interactions you have in cosmic radiations. The high energies produced by stars and galaxies and black holes, and those energies and those particles are colliding in outer space. So don't be afraid about CERN opening a black hole, because if it could, then, it would have just happened next to planet Earth in the cosmic radiation, but it hasn't. So, the energies we produce are high, but not that high. However, CERN already has produced a black hole, and it is going to devour everything, but that's in the pension fund, And this is actually key, because... Sorry?
I was just laughing.
Sorry, I thought you were about to interject. And actually this remark goes to the heart of everything, because when I'm launching into the next topic, which is all about the intelligence agencies and their crimes, the recurring theme is that they will try to obscure truth by throwing nonsense at you. And they will. The more they want to obscure something, the more spectacular the nonsense will be that they produce. And you have to cut that out. You have to go back to the really mundane and the really boring stuff, because that is what's going to kill you. That is what criminals and psychopaths will get you with. It's the boring stuff that you don't pay attention to. They'll make lots of noise here, and it will be all ooh, over here, razzle dazzle, and then where it's totally quiet and unassuming, that's where they will, steal your pension funds, poison your food and kill you in your own home, So that is what to look out for. And then to just explain, so I started off as a particle physicist. I'm a high energy physicist, but then I changed to, after the financial crisis, I thought, hang on, how on earth can this be? What just happened, and how can this be? So I started studying human systems. And with human systems, I mean everything. That's not a physical system like an engineering system, but a human system like currency systems, governments, corporations, and so on. And my idea was to approach it as a physicist and try to analyze the structure and try to figure out how the financial crisis could have come about. And I could do that because Oxford has these ancient fellowships whereby the fellows are given money and they're not told what to do. So I was allowed to change fields and do whatever the hell I like, as long as I didn't bother people, as long as I kept quiet. So I did. And I changed out of particle physics. And the first case study I wanted to look at was the English legal system. And it's because the English legal system is famous for being, sadly, not for being very just, but for being extremely expensive and inefficient, I wanted to find out why that was. And at the time, there was a very high-profile case. It was Berezovsky versus Abramovich. These are the two oligarchs. Berezovsky since then died. Abramovich is a billionaire and an oligarch and so on, Russian oligarch. And I went along because that court case was advertised in all the daily papers at the time. It was famous. It had high-profile lawyers, all the fireworks. And it was also public hearing with lots and lots of people. So I went along, and I was, I think, the only person who didn't know anything about the Russians when I went. Everybody else wanted to know about the billionaire's lifestyle, all the newspapers. And I wanted to know about the really boring stuff, like how do the lawyers do their work, and how does the judge, read the papers and go through all the amount of stuff. How can we make it more efficient? But then when I went, so in the first few weeks, there were lots of, people, members of the public and press. And I turned up as well, and I was just sitting there in the audience and listening. But then what I noticed after a couple of days is that I started being followed home. And that's when it all started. So at first, you just have an inkling that you might be followed home. And then by now I know that it was MI5, but then they made it really obvious. And that was that after, I think, the first week, there was a man at the end of my drive waiting for me in the morning. So I would come out of my house, I would walk down the driveway, and as soon as I stepped into the street, I would realize, hang on, there's a man just 5 meters away, just looking at me. I would just think, okay, he's probably waiting. I would turn off and walk to the train station to go to London. Then I would realize that, after I, went some 20 meters, he would start following me. The next day, there would be another man doing exactly the same thing. And it went on and on and on and on. And then after a while, the man would follow me maybe, halfway down the street, and someone else would be standing there and taking over. So bit by bit, the National Surveillance Network was pantomimed out to me. And I noticed they followed me all the way. I have to say, it's, at the beginning, it was very hard to tell. You just go for weeks trying to think, is this really happening? And then you realize at some point someone is going to be really overt, and then you think, okay, they're still following me. But then, bit by bit, I realized how they followed me all the way from my flat down to London, to the court building, and back home to Oxford. And I thought, okay, maybe it's, at first I thought, is it a security operation by the Russians? And then I realized everybody who followed me was British and seemed to know the terrain just, like their back pocket. And I thought, okay, no, this is MI5. This is the National Surveillance Network. But then what happened is that at the end of the court case, this stalking didn't stop. It just continued, and it turned into something that I now know is called street theater. And street theaters is when the surveillance network, which, by the way, when people say organized stalking, it's the HUMINTEL, it's the Human Intelligence Network of the intelligence agencies. And what they do is street theater is when they put on a little show. So they do something that's so unusual you will notice, and then they keep doing it. And sometimes they do that because they want to, it's to condition in triggers. They want to be able to kind of get into your mind and try to, control you a bit. And the only way to do that is through triggers. So they'll, what they did with me is that they started stalking me in the, literally dressed up like you would imagine a spy to be, with a trench coat and dark hats. So suddenly, as I was going, after the end of the court case, I would go from my flat to the college in Oxford. And on the short walk, there would be suddenly these men in their, 50s to 60s walking around in trench coats looking odd. And I've lived in Oxford for 12 years by that time, and I've never seen anything like that. And then I realized they are kind of stalking me. And then they would just, I would step out of the college, and one guy would be right opposite the gate, talking on the mobile phone and pointing at me. And then another day, someone would be down the street just stepping into my path. And what they did is they tried to condition me to respond to this sort of stuff, photograph me in the face and so on. And at first, I didn't understand what was going on. I thought MI5 is still trying to figure out who I am, maybe. But no, because MI5 knows after, a day who you are. They've got so much data on you. No, this is what this was. This was the beginning of my human trafficking, as I know now. That was the beginning of my human trafficking by MI5. And, they condition triggers into you. And then what happened is that over the next couple of months, I realized that suddenly a lot of young people started stalking me. And they were teenagers and in their early 20s. And they would put on street theater. And after a while, I would realize, there's an older guy just watching them. And what they did is they used me because I'm totally harmless. There's absolutely nothing about me. I'm not a criminal. And they used me to train up their little trainee spies. I was a prop. And they just kept going, And after a couple of months, everything happened. These young people stole my access card. Another time, there was even a break-in into my home. So, they trained these young spies how to break into people's homes and so on. And they came in and they rearranged my shoe cupboard. And, I just, put on my shoes, went to college. And by the time I went back, I opened the shoe cupboard and I wanted to put the shoes back. And the slot where they would fit in, because I had so little space, was just blocked. And then I realized, hang on, the entire shoe cupboard has been rearranged. And of course, you can't go to the police and say, officer, someone came into my home and rearranged my shoe cupboard, because they would just laugh you out of the station. And that's exactly what the point is. They want to be able to do that and get away with it. What I didn't know at the time is that the training up of young spies, and this is how we're tying it in with, when I said that the budget of British domestic intelligence doubled after 2003. So when an organization gets twice as much money, they have to use it up to get it the next year.
Yeah.
And it's like classic, right? So what they had to do is recruit whoever they can find in the country quickly. So these people would be the unemployed, or young people, or people from universities, and so on. But mostly young people. So what they did is that they had all these young people, and they had to train them. And the entire organized stalking, the explosion in organized stalking, entirely coincides with the budgets of the intelligence agencies ballooning. But now the problem is that organized stalking, sadly, is not the only thing that the intelligence agencies do. Because the intelligence agencies are also connected, because you've got military intelligence and so on, they're also connected to the military and to the arms dealers, so the weapons industry. And by the way, they're also connected to the pharma industry. And what they started doing with me is try modern weapons out on me. But that happened, I only noticed, they might have started a lot earlier, but that happened after a couple of years of stalking. And I cannot explain to you how terrible it is when you are, at the mercy of the intelligence agencies, because they're ruthless. They've never been regulated ever in their entire history. So they are used to do whatever they want to and get away with it. It's like, how the Inland Revenue can really screw up sometimes, and then you've got a hard time getting your right. But at the end of the day, they are public, institution, and still with them it can be hard. Or, take AT&T, can be a nightmare. But imagine AT&T with national security attached. So the Inland Revenue, where they can do whatever they want, and not once in their history has anybody actually taken them to task,
So it sounds like they could be used as a training, that this budget increase and all you and many other victims are just being used as pawns for training. But was there a reason why they picked you? Like, why would they? Was there something about that court case, or was it more of a coincidence, do you think? Or
every victim goes through the cycle of why me. And at first I thought, it must be because of the court case. But then again, they can check my credentials and there's absolutely nothing. I'm not a spy. I never worked for an intelligence agency. That's pretty obvious from what I did. I worked for Oxford for 12 years. They know everything. I was even an undergraduate there. So they have all my computer logs, every email I've ever sent in my life. They control Oxford, the intelligence agencies that is. So they know I'm not a spy or anything. So that's not it. And at first, I went through this analysis cycle of, after a while I discovered that there are lots of other victims. And at first, when you do the analysis, I found that you think, every person must have a reason. And people say, I am. Yes, it's true. Some people have set somebody famous or somebody rich, and they have got connections to the intelligence agencies, and they blacklist you. That happens. But a lot of people are just chosen randomly. I think in my case, it might have also been, sexualized stalking, because there was a lot of that, and I think when you are a young woman, then you're also, used, and these people actually look forward to stalking you because they get the extra perving kick out of it. It's so much better than stalking some, hairy, sweaty drug dealer, all day long. So their day job would be just to watch you in your own home, including in the shower and the bathroom, everything, and that's what they do. So there's a lot of sex trafficking going on. But overall, I went through this cycle of thinking, it must be the court case, then realizing, no, it's not. It's much more likely that's actually, sexualized stalking. And once you're on the blacklist, there's no way to get off. And then I analyzed some more, And when you go through the full cycle, you realize, hang on, no, there is a pattern. There is a pattern how these people are picked. Because, I've now looked into this for over a year in detail. And I'm now working with people to try to stop this. And we have gone through a lot of victim, testimonies. And one of the things that I discovered is that the intelligence agencies pick people of highest integrity. People of really either special skills, high intellect, high integrity, very high, social engagement in the community, people who really try to help others. They also pick single mothers with sometimes autistic children, and there I think they're doing they're running experiments on them. But I didn't understand what was going on. I kept thinking, why don't they just pick criminals? Apart from the fact that even that wouldn't be ethical, right? You can't just test weapons on a criminal or someone who you think is a criminal. But you know what I mean.
Yeah.
When you're really just absolutely honest, you think, why don't they just take the local drug dealer and so on? And now I discovered why they don't do that. It's because the local drug dealer works for them, right? He's part of the business. He's, dealing drugs is big biz. The intelligence agencies are not just involved, they seem to be organizing it. Because based on the surveillance tools they have, which I now know they have, it's pretty obvious to everybody that organized crime couldn't exist if the intelligence agencies weren't at least condoning it, if not running it outright. So you have
CIA's been caught running drugs like countless times. It's like pathetic, really. And El Chapo's got what, like 14 billion in the bank?
Yeah.
14 fucking $billion.
Exactly.
Where that's going to put him in like the top 50 richest people in the world.
No, I don't think so. It'd be interesting to know, but I don't think so. Maybe in the top couple hundred.
Yeah, but nevertheless, and I think the key is to realize that the intelligence agencies, when they get caught, they want to portray it like, a couple of bad apples, and okay, this thing, the organization ran out of control. The sad truth is, and everything I've seen confirms that, it's not. This is what they do. This is what they're there for. They are there to make money for the cartel with organized crime.
Right.
They're there to cover it up. They're there to enable it, to facilitate it. And yes, in every organization like that, you have a patchwork of good people and bad people. So sometimes they have to fight their own employees and their own colleagues. You have parallel organizations who are in charge of running drugs. And the second part, which you try to keep as, underfunded as possible, who's desperately trying to fight the drug dealing,
Yeah.
So he's just ahead of Rupert Murdoch and Elon Musk. He'd be number 80.
80?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to ask, who are they working with,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just it. It's insane.
Yeah.
Really, like
it absolutely
you
is.
can't pull that kind of shit off out of a fucking
Without
hut of a hut in Mexico.
Yeah.
No, you've got high level help to get $14 billion.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And and now the situation is that we have these organizations. I always say that, it's called the Secret Service. If you've got a Secret Service, and, if it's secret, then people can get away with anything. So sooner or later, it will turn, there will be some criminal shenanigans. And then the criminals will take over because they're psychopaths, they're ruthless, and because there's so much money in crime, because it's not taxed. So when you've got anything secret, criminal elements will get in, they'll take over. So before you know it, your Secret Service will be your criminal service. And that's, I think, what we have. So, sorry.
No, so picking you out and what you described as the people that they choose for this harassment, is that part of like splitting off finding out who's not in the cartel, or at least making sure that whoever they're doing is not part of the cartel, really? The extended cartel.
Yes, and that's correct. So they are. I think some in some cases I thought, hang on, maybe they were working for organized crime, but the wrong branch.
Yeah.
But there's a few cases like that. But by and large, the vast majority of the people on these blacklists are people of absolutely highest integrity who are not part of the cartel. That's right. That's what I discovered. And this is why it's so important that if you want to fight the cartel, the people you can, trust are the people who are on these blacklists, because if they were part of the cartel, they wouldn't be on the blacklist.
Yeah.
And it is, when you think about these big, complex human systems, it's also easy to understand why we would end up in this situation because, when you have ruthless people and you empower them one way or another, either through inadvertency or because, you're running an organized crime ring, these people will always go after the best and brightest, either out of personal vengeance or because there's so much to get from those people.
Yeah, and there's a lot to gain from the harassment as well. Exactly. And that is another topic that my colleagues and I are just about to get into, which is how much money you can make with a person's death, And so to cut to the chase, I mean, there's we discovered now that there are many, many different ways that the people on these blacklists are being used. I think it's fair to say that what these blacklists actually are is they are part of a business plan. They are not anti-terrorism devices. They're not. They're part of a business plan where at every scale people make a lot of money. And how they make money differs on different scales, but everybody makes a lot of money. So the way it works, I think, is if you take the organized gang stalking, which is the human intelligence network of the intelligence agencies, the stalkers themselves get paid a lot of money just to do the dumbest type of work. And because the intelligence agencies expanded so fast the last 15 years, they couldn't take hardworking people who had high-paying jobs because they had high-paying jobs, right? They were busy. So they took whoever was available, to just use up their budgets. And the people who were available were the people who were either lazy, stupid, or who were neither lazy nor stupid, but just happened to be unemployed. But they, in vast majority of the cases, they seem to have taken the absolute dregs of society.
Is that why there's such a leak problem, do you think?
A leak problem, you mean with the classified information leaking out?
Yeah.
No, I think the leaks we find are actually the good guys in the intelligence agencies desperately trying to wring in, information from the criminals' hands and getting them out there for us. I think that's it, because the low-level gang stalkers would not have access to this sort of information, and they're usually very corrupt people who don't really care that much. So they will keep their mouths shut. That's what I've observed. But when you are on these blacklists, you will be stalked everywhere by this frankly low life, and they are incredibly stupid, incredibly arrogant, and extremely corrupt. And they can be made to do anything whatsoever for $5, it seems. So that in itself is deadly.
Let's get into some of the high-tech weaponry that they're using against you guys. So,
exactly. Now, this is now we're going up on the scale of how they make money. So the high-tech weaponry is, in the first instance, part of it is still weapons testing.
Yeah.
Okay. So you people on the watch lists are used as guinea pigs for weapons testing. But the weapons themselves are, as we've now discovered, part of a global weapons system that is the most dangerous that humankind has ever built. So the weapons that they are now testing on us, when you're a victim, I was just stalked and harassed for a couple of years, but then in Germany, so also these surveillance lists are international, so your harassment follows you wherever you are in the world seamlessly, because the intelligence agencies are all one, interlinked. And I went to Germany, and I hoped that the harassment would stop, but instead, after a while, they started testing what's called electromagnetic weapons on me. So they can, with these electromagnetic weapons, they can do anything. Induce cancer silently so that you don't even notice, give you a heart attack, give you brain damage, make your muscles twitch, give you all sorts of weird symptoms. They can remote control your arm and so on and so on. And the way it works, to explain the technology, is the most surprising and the most powerful aspect of this technology is that certain frequencies go through building materials almost like glass. Wow. So when you have mobile phone traffic, for example, so mobile phone frequencies, they go through brick and concrete as if it were milky glass. You know, if you point a laser point at milky glass, it still goes through and you can still point at somebody on the other side. And when you now have, you know, a standard thickness wall, microwaves go through at 50%. So it means that if you double the intensity, it's like as if there weren't even a wall, you know. And so a lot of the mobile phone signals that we have are in the megahertz to gigahertz range. It turns out that those frequencies, but also other frequencies, have bioeffects. You know, and what that means is that if the energy of the electromagnetic wave is punched into your body, it can set off your nerves, so it can make your muscles twitch, you know, just like if you get electroshocked, your muscles twitch or cramp up. And it turns out you can also use an electromagnetic pulse and do that, but they can also cause pain. And as you know, microwaves can also cook tissue, right? They can heat it, they can charcoal it, they can make it boil, they can make, you know, your body pop, just like the sausage would pop in the microwave. And so deadly aspect number one is that it goes through walls. So this means if you've got a microwave weapon, you can shoot at somebody inside their own home. Right? Go figure. You don't even have to shoot through the window. You can go shoot through the wall. And then the second really scary thing about these things is that they are very easy and extremely cheap to manufacture. If you think about your microwave in the kitchen, I mean, mine was something like, you know, 20 euros, so $20. And if you strip away the cavity, you know, where you put your food in, and the metal cladding, which is just insulation to keep you safe, and you just take the little device that makes the microwaves, it fits into the palm of your hand. And that little device is producing so much energy that it can cook meat, it can charcoal it, or it can make, you know, meat pop. Now, that already tells you that for $20, you can buy a weapon with which you can kill somebody on the other side of a wall, because the microwave frequencies will go through brick. Okay, the only thing that blocks microwaves is metal. And if you look carefully on the glass front of your microwave, you will have a little mesh, and the meshing size is matched to the wavelength to keep the microwaves in. So you can still look through, because light, visible light, is a different frequency, but it will block the microwaves. But should you not have that mesh, it could literally kill you instantaneously if you turn on your microwave. Now, what people started doing is that they figured this out, and they put little emitters that are the size of the emitter in your microwave or even smaller, and they turned them into guns. And they're not much more expensive than your microwave. And you can shoot at people through the wall, and you can give them heart attacks, brain damage, cancer, everything.
Do you consider this the type of electromagnetic weapon, or is this a separate thing altogether, the microwave and the electromagnetic ones?
No, it's it's an electromagnetic weapon. So electromagnetic is the it's kind of the compound name, and it's all based on electromagnetic waves, and then microwaves are just one particular frequency. If you like, everything, radio waves, visible light, even X-rays and gamma rays, you know, from a distant galaxy, that's all electromagnetic waves. It's all light, if you like. The only thing that's different is the frequency. So radio waves have a very long frequency, very low frequency, so therefore very long wavelength. You know, radio waves can be 500 meters, 200 meters, or, you know. But if you have visible light, that has a very, very short wavelength. You know, it's oscillating extremely fast, the little wave. It's just wiggling very fast. So the wavelength is very small, but the frequency is high. So the microwaves are just one part of these electromagnetic weapons. And it turns out that if you go to even lower frequencies in the hertz range, so hertz, this scientific unit is beats per second. So, you know, a wiggle of the electromagnetic wave per second. Mm-hmm. And if you're in the low hertz range, you can even interfere with the human brain, with the neural functioning of the human brain. You can disrupt it. And at first it sounds really fancy, all this mind control stuff. These are mind control weapons. But if you think about it, you can disrupt the human brain by just whistling in the library, right? That's the equivalent of disrupting a human brain with audio sounds. It goes into the brain, it messes up whatever the brain wants to focus on, and you suddenly can't focus. You can't read in a library anymore. And this is the best example I found to explain to people how you can do exactly the same with electromagnetic waves. So I don't have to tell you that if I just zap your head and I just, shoot a fast pulse into your head, you might get disoriented and you lose your train of thought,
Yeah. And, so how do you tell the difference between something, like let's say this has been happening to you and you feel something happen, or you notice something biologically, and then do you see somebody? Have you ever caught anybody in the act, or how can you tell that's not just sort of your own?
Yeah. So what you can do, the first time I was attacked with an electromagnetic weapon, I was shot at from a helicopter, and these devices are called crowd control weapons. And I was just on the rooftop terrace of my home in Munich, and when you get shot at by one of these things, because I was standing under a glass roof, and this helicopter just stopped above me, and suddenly you feel like you've got waves traveling through your body. But it's so intense. It's like, when you're in a swimming pool and you're standing next to these high pressure water jets underwater, and you can feel your tissue moving. Well, it was just like that. It was just like that. And my front and my legs were just vibrating. And I didn't know how and what, And I think that was either intimidation theater or an actual weapons test on me, But then, at the time, I thought, what just happened? And I thought, okay, never mind. They just did some nonsense again. But then when we moved to Switzerland, I started being attacked all out with these microwave weapons. And it came about because there was a break-in into my home. And I said to my husband, I had enough of this nonsense. I'm going to go to the police and I'm going to spill the beans on all of this stuff. I want this to stop. And half an hour after I said that, we went to bed. And in bed, I was assaulted all out with microwave weapons. And what happened is that I was just lying in bed and suddenly my foot started burning, but really like as if it were on an oven plate. And then you just freeze and you're really shocked. And then this burning sensation started moving up my leg onto my knee. And that turned instantly into deep joint ache. And this was so weird. I immediately put my hand on it. And then the pain transferred from my knee onto the knuckles and joints of my hand. I was just thinking, what on earth is this? And your skin is tingling or slightly burning, but you've got this intense joint ache. And then I put my other hand on my hand, and the pain transferred again. And then waving my hand around, I thought, hang on a second, there's something here in the room. It looks like a beam. It feels like a beam. And then they switched it off. So when you get attacked by these microwave weapons, you really know when the intensity is high enough, when they really want to disconcert you. So you would feel a burning sensation or joint aches. But if it's pulsed, you would feel suddenly muscle twitches and things like that, because somebody shoots a pulse into your muscles and they contract. And they've got, to be honest, so many different ways, because they can create any sensation that human beings have, because all our sensations are electromagnetic, so they just have to trigger the right nerves and so on. And that's it. And what happened to me is that once they started with that, it never stopped. I ended up on the all-out weapons testing program, which is a program that takes victims and just it's using them to ultimate attrition, essentially.
Yeah. So what are some of the other kinds of weapons you were talking about?
Oh, they are. So now this is the microwave weapons are the the lower end. So it just gets ever fancier from there. So you can. What they also have is, I should also say, these radar surveillance devices with which you can just use radar to just do very high resolution surveillance inside homes. There's, I think, Lawrence Livermore Lab is selling a device where they say you can just put it on the back of a pickup truck and make a floor plan of a multi-story building. What they don't say is that whilst you're making that floor plan, you will also see where the people are, in what position they are sitting in whichever room, what they're doing. And you can use these devices to survey people into the greatest detail. But then what they can also do is, I think it's called pulse Doppler, pulse radar, and miscellaneous other things. And with that, you can vibrate people's bodies. There's also ultrasonic devices and vibrational devices where you can just, vibrate people inside their own home. And that's all fairly easy to understand in low tech. Where it gets really weird is the stuff that they are researching now, which is using electromagnetic weapons combined with nanotechnology to control human beings into the greatest detail. And that's when it gets really deadly, because what you can do is you can inject certain nanotechnology into a person, or just put it in their food and it ends up inside them. And you can have nanotechnology that adheres to different parts of their body. You can pick nanotechnology that adheres to an organ, or you can have nanotech that goes into the brain. And depending on what sort of nanotech you have, you can enhance the amount of energy that tissue will absorb from an electromagnetic wave. Okay, so I said earlier that microwaves go through walls. Well, microwaves also penetrate our bodies, And if you give somebody nanotech that maybe adheres to parts of their brain, and then you send a wave through it, you can do things like you just cook their brain. Someone standing next to them in the same beam will be fine because their brain will not absorb the same amount of energy. If you've got, for example, metal particles, then they will absorb this energy and heat the local tissue, things like that. So what we discovered is that by looking at, first of all, my own experience, and then looking at victim testimonies, is that intelligence agencies now seem to be busy trying to read out brains remotely. So this is your brain print, your electromagnetic activity inside your brain, and they can do that to a very, very high degree. I think using nanotech and certain types of microchips. And they can also read out the signal that you have during one particular activity and then send the same signal back at a later time.
Oh, interesting. So they can mimic they can mimic your response to something?
Exactly. And they can mimic. So if you just have a human being who just does something, your brain activity for motion and your brain activity for complex thought is very similar. You've got synapses firing. And you've got all these electromagnetic currents in your brain, and they create a field. And if you can read out that field, you can, if you're fairly sophisticated, you can try to recreate that type of field, or try to stimulate the part of the brain that was active at the time. And then you can, set off that part of the human brain. For example, one of the things that's ancient is that very early on, people discovered that different emotions have, for example, are triggered with different glands in the human brain. And a microwave weapon expert, Dr. Barry Trower, said, well, already in the 70s, they knew that you can use a pencil beam and shoot a pencil beam into a person's head and make them instantaneously aggressive.
Wow.
And then if you think about it, we've got now modern pattern recognition technology. If you take your mobile phone and you want to take a picture of somebody, it automatically shows up with these little squares around people's faces, right? And if the people move around, the squares move with them. Now, that's just, crappy software that comes for free with your phone. When you're thinking about pattern recognition for military applications, then, a military pattern recognition software could pinpoint, I would say about 1 millimeter on your face, the same square millimeter on your face. Regardless what you do. You could be jumping up and down or, running or cycling. So when you have this sort of pattern recognition and you combine it with a microwave emitter, creating a very fine pencil beam, what you can do is if you follow this person around and keep this beam aimed at their head, is that you You don't just make them aggressive, you can keep them aggressive. So let's say you want to, cause somebody to, become aggressive and start shooting up people. Well, you can do that remotely. And they wouldn't know about it, right? And the environment wouldn't know about it. So that's what we're dealing with.
Well, if people are even having a hard time believing this high-tech stuff, like I was looking into the labs, you mentioned Lawrence Livermore Labs, and there's about 8 or 10 of them in the States themselves that are huge, like very, very high-tech. Thousands of scientists working for each one, all kinds of high-tech programs, stuff you never really hear about, like, Sandia Labs, Brookhaven, what's the other one? There's a couple more, Lawrence Livermore, and thousands and thousands of scientists, most of it funded through the Department of Energy and other corporations. So, and they're pretty open on their website. I mean, I'm sure they have a lot of secret stuff as well, but I mean, just the stuff alone that you can just go browse on their website, you would think they have no problem making the type of stuff you're talking about.
Yeah, and it's when you have to understand this really sophisticated stuff, it helps to break it down into simple elements you can understand. And what I just mentioned, this pencil beam thing, that's what Dr. Barry Charles says they already had in the 70s, nailed. So we're now over 40 years on. And what they have now is just amazing. And the arms industry went through the same acceleration that the software industry went through, how it, you have these synergies and the developments just get faster and faster. And unfortunately, the weapons industry went through exactly the same thing. So the developments they had from the 1970s to the 1990s are just as fast as, what we would have maybe from 2013 to 2015,
Yeah, wow.
So, and that's it. So, yeah, but I always say, if you took somebody, right, say we go back to mid-1980s, okay, and you have somebody who comes forward and they say, well, I've got this little device that it fits into the palm of my hand, and I can just talk into it, and I can just send an image through this little thing to anybody in the world, right? And I can send, a picture of my private parts to my girlfriend, and there's this satellite system, and it's just, it just enables me to do that. Well, people in the 1980s would have thought, what nonsense, right? But the truth is that the military satellite system in the 1980s already did what our mobile phone systems do now, right? And we all know the example I've listed. It's so popular. It has its own verb. It's called sexting, right? So, and it's very popular with politicians. So you have this situation whereby it's true, there is this big satellite system entirely catering towards sending images or sending voice messages from one point of the planet to another. So now what I'm telling you is that there is a satellite system which runs in parallel and sometimes on the same devices as these things, where you can send brain prints from one part of the globe to another. So what the intelligence agency seem to have done is decode what we call internal speech. So when you're thinking something and you're thinking in full sentences, you have an internal dialogue. And it seems to be the case that they can read out that internal dialogue. So if someone points a beam at your head and then reads out this internal dialogue, they can send your internal dialogue across the globe, just like as if you'd left a a voice message.
Wow, that's crazy.
It is, but it's not that crazy. And then when you have the system, you suddenly understand. One of the biggest things that people didn't understand for years was people claimed that they had voices in their head, and they claimed, there seems to be a group of people who's just talking to me nonstop, and they are responding to the things I am thinking. And people couldn't believe it. But actually, all it is reading out this internal dialogue, and then sending it to maybe a test lab somewhere around the globe where people just analyze this on a laptop. And then they either speak into a microphone or, don't even do that. They just think a certain text, and that's sent back to your brain.
And they've got, I mean, some of this is out in the open too, right? I mean, they've got, there's an article here from the Daily Mail, and it says, "Run away, the ray gun is coming," and it's about these guys testing the U.S. Army's new secret weapon, which is that one of these ray guns, and it's like they're doing these tests, and it's like really hurting them, like causing pain and all this kind of stuff. And then it gets into Raytheon talking about where is it here? I just lost it. It was talking about all the different types of weapons that they're making.
Yeah, and you know what? The stuff that's in the Daily Mail, this ray gun, I think that is just gradual disclosure.
That's what I was wondering,
Yeah, it's just gradual disclosure about technology that was around 30 years ago, I think, you know? And they will not put into the Daily Mail what the current stuff is that they're testing. But on the other hand, when you've got a victim of the intelligence agencies, if they're really in a weapons test program, what they will be exposed to is what people want to test now. So when you talk to victims of the intelligence agencies, you have to mentally prepare yourself that you will be hearing about technology that you might not even know about yet, because that's what the intelligence agencies would be testing on them for the weapons industry.
Yeah.
And this is where this big schism comes from. But what we truly have now is a situation whereby, I mean, as I said in the beginning, there are several layers to this. So the gang stalkers earn their money by just being paid. One layer up, senior members of the intelligence agencies can get cash back by stalking their love interests or destroying people who are business competitors to them and so on. So that there's a lot of cash back in that. One level up, at the level of the intelligence agencies themselves, they can make money by guinea pigging the people on their blacklists and earning money. But now, in the last step, I want to push people further and say, how do people make money above the scale of the intelligence agencies? Okay? And this is where we close the circle at last. Because I said in the beginning that it seems to be the case that we have the one bank who owns the one agency. Mm-hmm. So if I say, who makes money, or how can somebody make money above the scale of the intelligence agencies? The question really is, how would the one bank make money out of a system like that? And this is now the shocking answer where I need absolutely everybody's help. The one bank is making money by asset stripping nations. Okay? And I think it's Alex Jones who said, the First and Second World War were entirely managed and financed and staged by American and London banks. I think he said something like that. That's certainly true. Now, those American and London banks already at the time of the First and Second World War were part of the One Bank, which is headquartered in Switzerland. And there's a Swiss historian called Jean Cross, who also talks about how it was actually the Swiss, cartel here that was funding the First and Second World War, which is why in the Second World War, in the entirety of Europe was burning, apart from Switzerland. Okay, because the people who paid for this were sitting here and they were watching the show. Now, this is how. So if you go back through history, I think a case can be made that it was the one bank that paid for the First World War, that paid for the Second World War, and used both of those occasions to asset strip nations. In the Second World War, they really asset stripped Germany. After the Second World War, we had communism, and that was actually a big asset stripping exercise, of Russia and China. Okay.
And now are they stripping the Middle East now, or what's going on now?
Yes, they're stripping the Middle East, and we saw that, right? I mean, now all these oil companies are, have brought freedom to those countries they invaded, right? Yes, that's it. And then the financial crisis, asset stripped Spain, Greece, Portugal, right? And all these. Yeah. And now the question is, who's left? So where are the fat cows still left? And the
America.
fat cows, Yeah, in the US and in Europe. That's right. So now the question is, with all this, what we've really observed is this explosion in gang stalking, this explosion in the intelligence agencies, this insane this insane weapons testing of miscellaneous electromagnetic weapons on people. And now my question to your audience is, how can the one bank make money with that? It has to do with asset stripping. So how can you use all of these things, organized stalking, invisible weapons that can give people heart attacks or brain damage or cancer? How can you use that to asset strip the US and Europe? Right? Answer on a postcard. But I think we all have a rough idea, right? Well, if we don't, we can go back and think, how did they asset strip Germany?
War.
And how? Exactly. But it has to be a war on their territory, And
even just a civil war.
Yeah, a civil war or a proper war, exactly. And then you have all these reports about the FEMA camps and, is it Walmarts or miscellaneous weapons stashes just popping up across the country with so many, bullets that, there's more bullets than people, in the US. And then you think, oh, okay, right? And now this is not even it all. It turns out that everything I said about how you can, disrupt the human brain and so on can be done with microwaves. And as soon as you've got microwaves, you can also do it through the microwave towers. But
right.
Also you can have little microwave guns hidden in cars, that shoot at people as they're driving their car. And people have done that to me. I had now 3 assassination attempts, which I survived the last year. And all of them were being shot in the head whilst I'm driving my car with an electromagnetic gun. Now it turns out that the microwave towers, these gang stalkers, some of whom have electromagnetic guns and so on, are all part of one big global weapon system. It's a fully integrated weapon system. It's also fairly centrally controlled. Wow, right?
Yeah.
This is what we're dealing with. So we're dealing with a situation whereby you guys in the US and me in Europe, we are just before the hot part of World War III, where there will be a war on both our territories to asset strip our nations. Right? That's the truth.
So this is what you're trying to get. You're gaining support for what? How can people help this cause then?
So now, given that this is the situation, people can help by. So first of all, we have to stop this weapon system. That's number one, because this weapon system is used by the one bank, otherwise known as the banking cartel, to kill off politicians who they don't like, who would be standing in the way of World War III, kill off private people, who they don't like, and so on. And this is just before I say how we can help. This is where it all ties in with what I said earlier, because if you really want to launch a war somewhere, you also have to get rid of the people of high integrity, because they would be highly regarded in their community. People would listen to them in hours of need, and that would be actually very powerful, especially with social media. So what we're seeing is actually, it's in the Second World War, it was called an Intelligenzaktion. That was when the Gestapo, the Germans, marched into Poland, but before doing so, they identified who the bright people, who the intelligent people were, the intelligentsia, and who were the people of highest integrity and high patriotism in Poland. And they identified them beforehand, and when they moved in, they lined them up in the street and shot them in the head. And then they invaded, because there was the society didn't have any resilience anymore. They couldn't organize themselves. They couldn't express themselves. They didn't even know what happened, because all the intelligent people who could figure it out were dead. Now, I'm saying that exactly the same is happening now in Europe and the US.
Wow.
These people on the blacklist are all people of highest integrity, special intellect, or, I'm not talking intellect in terms of you've got a high educational degree. No, that's not what's required. What's required is you've got your head out of your backside and you've got your eyes wide open. There are very few people who are like that, as you know, right?
Yeah.
You can identify these people with large database analysis. You can just go through their Twitter feeds or their social media. You can identify them. And if they're ahead of the pack in terms of figuring this out, you can exterminate them with electromagnetic weapons. You can put them on the slow kill program. And that's what I'm on. I'm on the slow kill program. So if you guys want to figure out how the hell to stop your part of World War III in the Americas, I suggest you have a good look who is on the slow kill program, because there's something extremely special about them. There's something extremely important that you will need. They are your national treasures. And some of these people look like nothing. They're not flashy. They don't drive flashy cars. Some of them don't have high educational degrees. But what's special about them is that they have insight, or they are particularly kind, very social. They are the supporting structures of your society. And maybe you remember the collapse of some very high-rise towers, in the recent past.
Yeah.
The way that was done, it seems, given that jet fuel just can't burn high enough to melt the amount of steel that was in those, or melt steel at all, but certainly not the amount of steel that was there. So given that that's not possible, what happened, and there was evidence for that, is that certain explosives have been placed on the supporting girders. I think there's many things that happened that day using, some people say also fancy technology, but certainly there were explosives placed on the supportive structures of those edifices. Now, what I'm saying to you is that everything I know as a systems analyst tells me that if you want to take down a society, you would have to do the same. You would have to weaken the support structures of that society. Now, societies are highly complex systems, and the support structure is, how you've got in those high rises, I'm sure that there were fancy penthouse suites at the top, but the fancy penthouse suites were not the supporting structure. They just look good, but they didn't have a supporting function. The real supporting functions were in the basement, in dirty rooms. That's where the solid girders were. And our societies look exactly the same thing. We've got fancy people like politicians and billionaires and stuff like that, but they are not the supporting people in our society. They are not the supporting girders. And everything I've analyzed over the past year tells me that the one bank used large database analysis. That's why they needed access to all our phone records and emails and all that, okay? That's why the intelligence agencies in the war of terror wanted access to everything, because they used all that to identify who the true national treasures, who the true supporting girders in our societies are, and they quietly placed them on a blacklist for takedown.
So how do you find that blacklist and who to check out as the support structure?
So it's very easy to find, because a lot of the victims will be, I kid you not, on Twitter and YouTube begging for their lives. You can find these people by just searching for the keywords targeted individual, organized gang stalking, and electromagnetic harassment. Now, all these three terms, which is what the community has to use because that's what everybody's using, are PSYOP terms by the intelligence agencies. Organized stalking is you being on a blacklist and you being followed by the HUMINTEL network, the Human Intelligence Network of the National Surveillance System. Organized stalking. What else did I say?
I'll put these terms in the show notes as well. So we have target individuals, organized stalking, and electronic harassment.
Exactly, electronic harassment. And electronic harassment is actually microwave mutilation. That's what it really is, because these people are to die. Okay, so it's not harassment. It sounds like after a bit of harassment you can recover. No, this is a terminal list. These people are meant to die. They're meant to be totally debilitated by the time the World War kicks off. Okay, that's, to the best of my knowledge, that's the case. So I would suggest everybody who's listening is find those people. Also keep in mind that the intelligence agencies put a lot of fakes into the community who just spread disinformation. So what my colleagues and I are trying to do is find the genuine victims and try to help them as quickly as possible. But to stabilize our societies, we need to rescue every single one of those targeted individuals. We don't know what's so special about them, but something is super special about them and we need them, That's point number one. And you mentioned, every person can also support court cases. If we want to rescue the system, and I cannot express to your audience how urgent this is, if we want to stop World War III, the only way to stop it in a civilized manner is to deal with all of this in court cases. Use our public institutions to cycle the system back into sanity. And what your listeners can do is help us launch these court cases. So I spent about a year trying to find people of high integrity whom I trust, who don't bullshit me and don't spread disinformation. And I now have a team of 5 women. So what we did is, and also I should say that all these victims have been trying to report these crimes against them to the police, but it seems to be that the police is captured. They have been told by the intelligence agencies to ignore all reports of microwave weapons.
Yeah.
And currently, because of this, the FBI and also the Canadian police and all the European police forces are de facto suspended. If someone attacks you with a microwave weapon, the police does not care.
Wow.
That's the truth. I online, I put up what happened to me when I wanted to report a brutal attack in a hotel room in the UK. And they didn't even allow me to talk to a police officer. They literally sent me out of the police building telling me, a police officer is going to come and talk to you in your hotel room. Well, they didn't. They waited until they thought I'm in bed, and then they sent a so-called mental health ambulance. Well, I recorded the entire interaction, and if people Google on YouTube MI5 crimes, they can find my entire interaction with these police officers who had no idea about microwave weapons. They were just sent there. The overall effect was meant to be intimidation theater for me. And in the end, I talked to them and I was trying to explain to them that, we have microwave weapons. They cost less than a microwave. You can buy one for $200, dollars off the internet, and you can point it at somebody in their home and make them drop dead from a heart attack.
Wow.
Maybe the police should know, right?
Yeah.
And you can see for yourself the faces of these police officers, when I tell them that stuff.
So back to so you got the team of 5 women, and you're
exactly. So the team of 5 women, we've joined because the police are suspended. We created a joint investigation team. So that is a criminal, investigation team, Europe and US. And we are trying to put together information for the police, try to help victims and try to cycle the system. But all of these 5 women are also on the blacklist. And one of the women who's on the blacklist is Karen Melton Stewart, who's an NSA whistleblower. She is more important than Snowden. That's why she's on the blacklist. She is the most important whistleblower because when you listen to her story, you realize that it touches on the deep capture in the NSA. She stumbled across the criminals who were in the process of capturing the NSA, the last bit of capture that had to be done, to use the NSA entirely for the one bank's purposes, And so she is, hold on a second, just a moment. Forgive me, my laptop is about to die here.
That's okay.
That's okay. We're about ready to wrap it up. And if our listeners want to continue the research, where's the best place to follow your work or to follow you on social media?
Yeah, sorry, I saved my laptop. So what I want to say is if you go to stop007.org, you will see it's called Support Our Fighters, and there are these 5 women, and they're all super special. Karen Melton Stewart, she worked for 28 years for the NSA. She's the biggest NSA whistleblower. She's the only NSA or the only whistleblower, in fact, in the world who talks about this electromagnetic weapon system. All the others are mute on the topic, even though they know about it. It's that big. Then there's Ramola D. She is a journalist, and I think one of the last investigative journalists in this field, talking about the intelligence agencies. She has interviewed everybody of importance. So if you go to a website, it's called everydayconcern.net. You can educate yourself about everything to do with this topic. All the interviews with all the people, victims, intelligence agents, it's all on there. Now, Ramola is so important. She's being harassed by 2 helicopters every time she takes her daughter to school.
Wow.
That's how important she is. We call her our 2 helicopter general. Now, that's, it's quite a recognition, to be harassed like that by the CIA. But then Dr. Millicent Black is also amazing. She is our Navy SEAL, essentially, because she is implanted to the hilt. She is brain linked to one of the super soldiers. Okay, so that's quite something. But this guy, turns out, is a total psychopath. The super soldier program seems to have produced super psychopaths.
Yeah.
And he is torturing her nonstop, talking to her through this intercom system, which is called Voice to Skull, which is this microwave beam, chat system. And he is torturing her to death. But that's not it. That's not all. He's also, it seems to be, controlling the entire town through subliminal messages via the local radio station and much, much more. Right? So there seems to be in her town an entire, mind control experiment happening. She is super, super important. And then Melanie Richan is also very interesting. She's also chipped and implanted. She was implanted with a self-growing device that grew into a strangulator, which was developed by, I think, one of the universities in Belgium and produced by Motorola, as she found out. So imagine Motorola produces strangulators that grow into your throat, grow around your neck, and then can be remote controlled to strangulate you. That's you were asking about fancy technology. Now that's the fancy technology that the intelligence agencies are testing.
Yeah.
Now she got the device out of herself. Parts are still in her, but she is now, working to help the victims. So what you have then the 5th person is myself. So what we are doing, if you could back us up, we would be so grateful, because what we are trying to do is shut down this weapon system so that our politicians can stop World War III. Otherwise, our politicians will be murdered by this weapon system. And what we're doing right now is, because it's so urgent, we have launched what is called the Tsunami email campaign. And we are emailing absolutely everybody in the world, everybody who's got a statutory duty to stop terrorism, or somehow a charity or should act in these sort of cases. And we've launched we've launched at the beginning of April, and we're running through April and May. And we are emailing 3 times per week, different countries and different states of the US. And we are emailing them in order of increasing size. So 156 countries and all the 50 states of the US. So our action days are Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday. And on every one of those days, we are contacting 2 US states and 6 countries in the world. And the idea is that we inform them that these crimes against humanity, because this is what they are, with microwave weapons, are happening around the world. And we ask them to stop it by the 1st of June 2017. So we deliver them an ultimatum. And it's so important that as many people as possible around the world take part in this, because we want to bring home to these officials how many people know about it. And every email that is sent is creating a liability for them. Because every person, every official with a statutory duty to fight terrorism and fight crimes against humanity has to do so when informed. So when you send an email to these officials, you have proof that can be used in a court case. If these people don't do anything, you have got enough proof to jail them. So we want to have as many people with this sort of proof that we can then rub into that in their faces. In the next phase, where we go to court cases with victims, and we say, why have the officials not stopped these crimes? So that's it. And this is what we're doing right now. Behind the scenes, we're also trying to identify victims, identify the technology and what has been done to them, and desperately try to find out how to help them as quickly as possible. So, anybody who could support us would be stopping crimes against humanity, but would also be working towards stopping World War III.
Those are some good ideas. Yeah, good.
Absolutely. Yeah. Big thanks for coming on the show. Of course, listeners, head over to stop007.org and check out all the stuff over there for how you can help along the way. Thanks again for coming on the show, Katherine.
Thank you very, very much for giving the opportunity to talk to you. I really appreciate it. And thank you very much to your listeners as well, that they were so patient to listen all the way to the end. Thank you.
Yeah, you did a great job. It was fun, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, take care.
Bye-bye.
And that was a show with Dr. Katherine Horton. Crazy stuff. Yeah, it lines up with all the wiki-leaks.
You know, it's weird. I think I heard about that maybe from Richard Serrett on the Conspiracy Show a few years ago, and it seemed kind of out there, but now when I listen to her, it doesn't really seem that far out anymore.
Funny what a couple of years will...
couple of years of podcasting will do. And the climate as well.
That's right.
Today, I mean, it's so much more acceptable now that might be happening.
The igloo protects us.
I think so. Yeah. I'll have to check when I'm leaving here. I'm going to be looking up for helicopters and microwave ray guns.
Oh, you're on a list, buddy. Guaranteed.
I'm on the blacklist.
Again, big thanks to Katherine for coming on the show, spending some time with us. Big thanks to you guys for listening. Of course, check out grimerica.ca/support for all the different ways you can help us keep having these conversations and not have advertisers or...
Yeah, remember what you said? Support your favorite people that you trust.
That's right.
Not the media.
Us. Much as you can, if you can. There's a bunch of different options there. If anything from $1 a month, $30 a month. Find something that fits your budget. If you can't afford that, there's a bunch of ways you can help the show that don't cost you a cent. From Spam and Gram to Synchros to rating the show on iTunes and everything in the show notes. If you check out the show notes, Graham has everything in there that you can do to help the show, and 9 out of 10 of them are free. And I think you could do probably all of them in like less than 5 minutes. Leave a message.
Right on.
At this rate, each voicemail costs us like $100. So it'd be nice to squeeze a few more of those in per year. I think that's about it, guys. Big thanks for listening. Anything else?
No, that's it. Thanks.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.
They may